What is up, Steelers Nation? We are back for take two. Hopefully, this one is a little bit better. We apologize for the laggy stream a couple of minutes ago, but this is another episode of All Steelers Talk. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. I am Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. We're going to start over. We're going to start right from the jump and go from where we were and continue to where we want to be. Everybody make sure that we're looking a little bit better. Please let us know if the stream is still a little bit messed up. We'll try to get it fixed. But for right now, we're hoping this was the quick fix between StreamYard and YouTube. We're going to dive into the first training camp fight of the Pittsburgh Steelers summer. A phenomenal day here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. There's something about football fights, man, where if it's one thing between Cam Hayward and a rookie offensive lineman, cool. If there's a couple of pushing and shoving between a linebacker and the center like there was today, cool. But if there is a moment where two benches are completely cleared and you got Najee Harris running up the sideline yelling to little kids, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. It's a different atmosphere. It is a moment where you will remember. It kind of feels like that's the beginning of football season. And that is what happened today. So let me dive into the fight. Then we'll get into some injuries and obviously the standouts for today. Plus, we will answer all of your questions. Nick, I know you got it. I know you got the video. We'll dive into it in detail. But first, let's see it. Pittsburgh Steelers brawl in Latrobe, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we got it from Dove Kleiman on Twitter, the 19-second video of everybody going all out.
Love it. You got to love it. So let me take you guys through my experience of this fight. We're good to take that down. Where I'm standing on the sideline, Jim Wexell standing next to me. I believe Mark Caboli and Chris Halleck are on the other side of me. We're watching a quick play. Justin Fields around the corner. The plays before that, 2 or 3 plays before that. Nate Herbig and Patrick Queen are getting into it a little bit. Pat Freiermuth and Joey Porter are getting into it a little bit. And you kind of feel tensions are flaring, man. It's hot out here. People are getting angry. This is a good time. Elandon Roberts takes a nice little hit, just a little shoulder right to Justin Fields as he's going around the corner. And don't get me wrong, Justin Fields was running a lot on the day. At one point, linebackers are going to get a little bit upset. Defenders are going to say, all right, look, man, I want to be able to touch you. This is getting ridiculous. Elandon gives him a shoulder. Justin goes right down. Troy Fautanu, who's standing there, gives Elandon a real nice shove. But before Elandon could turn around, Troy is like already a step away to the side. Mason McCormick is right there. So Mason gets the blunt of Elandon Roberts. And I'll tell you this, that thing started instantly. It was a fire that immediately blew up into whatever you want to say, however you want to compare it. It was great. A sleeper in this fight was Ryan McCollum versus Patrick Queen. Because if you go back, Patrick Queen got a quick little whooping from the 3rd, 4th string center in Ryan McCollum. I don't know where he came from. I don't know if Ryan was on the field or if he was just nearby or what went down. But that is, if you go back and look at the detail, number 62 gets a good shot on number 6, and it was a good day. A good training camp fight always gets the juices flowing, and it is my favorite day of the year. It's been a while since the Steelers have kind of gotten a brawl, and this is a good one. Now, the other side of that is, by the end of the day, everybody is loving each other, and this is just another day in football, and nobody's upset. I mean, Najee Harris was literally running down the sideline, and Russell Wilson's kid's standing 6 feet from me, and he's like, come on, get in there. Nobody cares. This is football. Tensions fly. It's a violent sport, violent guys. At the end of the day, it's all love, and a great day at Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. Vibing with the Dogs got a good question. Aren't they not allowed to touch the quarterback, though? They are not. Elandon Roberts, if he wasn't a 10-year veteran and probably the scariest person on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, I'm sure he would hear about it. And I'm sure he did hear about it, but at the same time, I think Mike Tomlin and the coaching staff kind of liked a little fire getting lit there for a second and the boys getting a little riled up, especially if nobody gets hurt and everybody walks away totally clean. First fight I was there, it was a good time. I won't ask you your opinion on it because you were not there, but a good fight in training camp gets the juices flowing, right?
Yeah, certainly you expect it to happen in the first week of the pads coming on. You don't expect it to happen, however, when Cam Hayward's in gym clothes. You alluded to it earlier. I don't remember if it was the first broken stream or this stream, but you alluded to the fact that, hey, it wasn't Cam Hayward. You almost expect him to get into a fight, and he was probably a little upset, like, man, like, of course, on my veteran day off, that's when the first fight happens. But,
dude,
you know, it's nice to see.
Cam is a guy. Like, if you're going to talk about who's in the fights most of the time, Cam Hayward is almost exclusively the starter of. He doesn't start them. He gets somebody on the offensive line to start them against him. That's how much smack he is talking, especially to rookies. Like, I remember Dan Moore's first season. He did not leave that guy alone, man. I felt bad by the end of it just because of how much he was talking smack. Cam Hayward he's the king of the fights when it comes to Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. Hopefully Landon's the new one because Landon's scary, man, and I enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it. We'll dive into a little bit more on the news front of things, and then obviously the standouts for the day. 2 new injuries that the Pittsburgh Steelers will keep an eye on are 2 outside linebackers, David Perales and Kyron Johnson. I didn't see Kyron Johnson get hurt, but Mike Tomlin obviously mentioned him after practice. David Perales went down with a knee injury. It was very apparent. It was the 4th or 5th play of the day during goal line drills, 7 shots. And he stayed down, rolled over, grabbed his knee, then got up, limped to the sideline, and eventually the cart took him up to the locker room. We said this yesterday with Roman Wilson. Look, you get hurt at training camp practice. It's never good to see you leaving on a cart. But if the Pittsburgh Steelers said, hey, your knee's bugging you, we're going to walk up a mile-long hill, maybe not doing the best part as a medical staff to keep their guys healthy. So I don't think it was that big of a concern for anybody to get carted off. 2 injuries. I don't know what it means to the Steelers just yet. We will have to wait and see. Perales was a guy that I think was competing for a roster spot, but I think Kyron Johnson was as well. Definitely a sleeper, a dude who could play special teams, who has experience in the NFL, who's played on teams, who has had success, who have had success. If they're long-term injuries and injuries that will take them right up to the first week of the season, chances are both of these guys find themselves outside of the 90-man roster moving forward. But if it's a week, couple of days, you bring them back, you keep them around, you don't replace them, and you move forward. But the Steelers are not going to let these guys sit around injured for the next 3 weeks and say, when they come back, we'll see if we have a roster spot or see how well they could do in 6-7 days to make the 53-man roster. They'll replace them if they need to. It's not the biggest news when it comes injury-wise for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is definitely a good thing. But at the same time, 2 pieces that I think had a lot of potential to make this team and were competing against a guy like Jeremiah Moon, and certainly not good to see anybody go down, but news that happened, and the Pittsburgh Steelers will adjust over the next 24 to 48 hours, I would say, to see how they have to handle the situation. If they do bring new people in, I think it does open the door for some interesting names that are potentially on the free agency market. And at some point, you got to consider maybe a bigger name like a Marcus Golden. And if that's the case, cool. These injuries push you over the edge and you make some moves going there. But again, we'll know a little bit more as we move forward. I want to dive into some questions and what you guys are looking for. So please toss them in the chat. But first, as we do every day of training camp, we're going to dive into the standouts, because today, let me tell you, there was a certain somebody who stood tall amongst the pack, who cleared everybody, who faced the biggest man in Pittsburgh potentially, and he himself is the shortest man in Pittsburgh. He describes himself as a little angry man, and well, he plays like a little angry man, and it's not Jaylen Warren, it is Beanie Bishop. I have come to the point currently, we are 6 days into practice now, where I am 100% in on Beanie Bishop, where he has shown me everything he needs to show me that this guy is going to make the roster, but is also going to be the guy moving forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is their diamond in the rough this summer. I get it. It's only been a week and maybe a day or two, But Beanie's good, man. Beanie's good. He's made a couple of plays, and what impressed me the most today, hands down, he lines up against George Pickens, the wide receivers in the corners. They're going one-on-one in the end zone, and it is, a matchup that's not fair. But you got Grady Brown yelling every time George stepped up. Every time George stepped up, Grady Brown's yelling in the back, 30, get 30 in there. I want 30 on George. I want 30 on George, which tells you a lot. And then Beanie, not once, but twice held his ground and won a matchup one-on-one against George Pickens. And it is not fair because George did not run all over the field and Beanie kept up with them and was able to bat a ball away. George ran I'm a foot and a half taller than you, and I could jump out of the building, so I will just run to the corner of the end zone, and Justin will throw it up in the air, and I will jump over you, and I will catch the football. Not once, but twice, Beanie was able to break up those passes, and that is awesome to see. I'm all in on Beanie Bishop. He is my dude moving forward. I think he's the guy that the Steelers want to become their starting corner or starting slot corner. Obviously, you're not going to start Beanie Bishop until you are totally sold that he is your safest bet at the position. But right now, he looks good, man. And I think I'm all in on the Beanie Bishop train. He's not my guy this summer. My guy is a fullback, and we'll get to him in a minute. But Beanie's pretty close, dude. And he has, for a guy who was not impressive in OTAs, who was not impressive in minicamp, he has certainly won me over. And I think at this point, it's almost very safe to say that he has earned himself a roster spot. He might be a lock at this point because his only competition is Grayland Arnold, and he's taken second, third team reps exclusively with Beanie taking the first team and going against George Pickens. I mean, at one point, Grayland was twice, actually. Grayland was lined up against George twice. He was taken out so that Beanie could go up against him. Steelers seem to know what they got in this guy, and they're excited about it. Beanie was your dude. He was a guy that you were high on. Your thoughts? I'm excited for you to see him out here.
Yeah, you mentioned that he's not the guy that, or he's the guy that they wanted. He's the guy that they needed to step up coming into camp.
Yes.
You look at their other options. I mean, Josiah Scott just got cut a couple of days ago. Coming into camp, both of us were saying that that's probably the leader in the clubhouse, and that's not a great thing. And that's if you don't want to move things around with Deshaun Elliott and DeMonte KZ on the back end, then it was probably Josiah Scott because of what Beanie Bishop looked like. But the fact that Bishop came in, especially once the pads came on and started having his better days then, that is a massive thing for the Steelers. And the good thing is while if Beanie Bishop's ready for the start of the season, I understand Tomlin doesn't like going to rookies early. He doesn't have to play that full season as the only guy there. You do have Cam Sutton coming back at some point, and once Sutton comes back, if Bishop seems to need a break, that hit that rookie wall, you have another option that is baked in. So I like the fact that Beanie Bishop's stepping up. Like you mentioned, I'm ecstatic. You might have to peel me away from the corners because I'm going to be watching Beanie Bishop all day, but I'm excited that he is stepping up, and he is what the Steelers needed to step up and who the Steelers needed to step up early in camp.
Yeah, I agree. And it works out perfectly because just like you said, if he hits a rookie wall, Cam Sutton comes back. But bare minimum, I mean, people will talk about, is Beanie going to be the reason that Cam gets cut? You're not paying Cam anything. You're paying Cam $500,000 this season. He is pretty much a volunteer for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you're not going to get rid of him. So you have two quality options in the slot. Cam could play the outside as well. That's as good as it gets for the Steelers right now. They look at this and say they're in prime position. If nobody stepped up between Grayland and Beanie and Josiah Scott, they'd be in a tougher spot because they'd be looking for a replacement. They don't got to go get a Patrick Peterson or a Stephon Gilmore because right now Cam Sutton's going to come back and be their backup all over the place because Beanie could step in the slot when need be. That's huge. Like what Beanie has provided for this defense and the versatility that they now have and the options that they will have in the back half of the season, it's going to do so much more than just, hey, he looks good against George Pickens, and that should get you excited. The Steelers are in a really good spot with this kid. I'm super excited for him. The other standouts on the day, we'll get into my favorite last here, but Van Jefferson looked good. He has been looking good. I mean, he's catching 300 passes a day off the jugs machines. That's wild to me. That is a wild number, but he's doing it. He had a phenomenal move. Put Anthony Averett on skates and one-on-ones. like to the point where I very rarely have reactions on the sideline. Like I very rarely am like, oh, that one got like, it was a verbal from everybody standing on that sideline. Oh, like it was good. Averett hit the ground. It was a nice move by Van Jefferson. Aaron Shapklin put Miles Killebrew about 8 yards into the turf today and ran him right over. And it was a moment where I went, you know what? This kid is impressing. And I think it's time that we start talking about how this kid is impressing because he has at least one good run every single day. He held his ground and backs on backers against some big names like Landon Roberts. He's a dude who may be a sleeper, but if Cordero Patterson isn't going to play until the start of the season, Shaplin's got all day long and all training camp long to prove his worth to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he could look good on special teams and if they could trust a name like Jaylen Warren and Calvin Austin back there, I mean, Cordero's costing you money and you could use some money whenever you're trying to make moves later in the offseason. I could see that as a name where, yeah, why not keep the guy out of Harvard who seems very smart, could block and could run a little bit, has a bunch of speed. Him and Jonathan Ward have almost exclusively taken second team reps. LaMichael P. Ryan's mixed in there from time to time, but he has his days and then he has his off days. Shaplin's a name that I'm excited to start watching. I don't think he's on the roster right now. I think he's on the outside looking in and probably 2 or 3 spots on the outside looking in, but he is certainly a name that I'm keeping my eye on moving forward. The other 2 are the big ones here. They had definitely the best days outside of Beanie Bishop. There are 2 names we need to start paying attention to. One of them you guys already know. One of them is my favorite guy on this roster. He is bringing football back. Make the fullback great again. I might get a shirt that says it. I don't know if I'm going to get sued, but we're going to try it out. These 2 are Jack Coletto and Michael Pruitt, and I believe that they're competing for a roster spot right now. They play 2 different positions, but Pruitt could probably play fullback if he needs to. They look very impressive at all times. And I want to say Coletto is a lock to make this roster because I don't know how you don't use a fullback in this offense. Every time they utilize a fullback, it's a huge play or it's a touchdown. There are 2 plays on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Pittsburgh Steelers playbook that are almost unbeatable. And that is I formation and the read option. Neither of them could be touched. Neither of them could be stopped. Jack Coletto provides that. Michael Pruitt is coming up with some phenomenal catches, but he's also a very good blocker, kind of a smaller Darnell Washington. If he could play fullback, I believe that there's a stronger case for him than Coletto. But man, I don't know, dude. Najee loves Coletto. Every time those 2 are on the field together, if you could keep Pruitt and go 13 personnel, massive day for any of the running backs. They both look, I mean, Jack Coletto went through, somebody was trying, and I'm not going to name names, okay? Because I'm not going to try to call anybody out, even though I should, because I told him I would call him out on the podcast. His name's Nick Farabaugh. Let's be honest.
I was waiting for it. I was like, he's not getting through this without it.
His name's Nick Farabaugh. He's trying to sit there next to me talking, saying, well, Jack Coletto's not going to make it, blah, 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 giving me all these excuses. And then Jack goes right up the middle and puts Mark Robinson, I'm pretty sure, onto another field. That's how hard he hit him, right on the ground. And Nick looks at me and goes, all right, that was a good play. And I was like, yeah, man, that's who Jack Coletto is. That's why you need a fullback. Those 2 look super impressive, man. And to be honest with you, I think I'm keeping one less wide receiver to make sure that both of those guys are on the roster because you could utilize them. And if the Steelers are going back to hard-nosed football, they're going to come in handy. So I'm big on Jack Coletto, but I'm also real big on Michael Pruitt right now. I think those 2 outside of Beanie Bishop were the biggest standouts of the day.
Yeah, it's the Coletto thing has continued to just go straight through the first week of training camp. And the longer it goes on, the longer you have to ask yourself, I mean, there wasn't really a fullback in camp last year. It was, Connor Hayward, Kendrick Green might be able to play there. Coletto's a true fullback. If they brought him in, it's for a reason. And especially knowing who Arthur Smith it makes complete sense. Now, the Pruitt thing, that's tough. How many tight ends are you really going to keep? Because Freiermuth is a lock. Yep. Washington's a lock. Hayward should be a lock. Yeah, I'm not going to say it. He's in that top tier. But then you have, they like Rodney as well, who's injured right now, but they like him as a special teamer. It makes it a lot harder once you have him and Michael Pruitt. Are you really going to keep 5? That's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I agree. It's not looking good. That being said, if you are the Steelers, okay, and I think you could get around this. It's not the most ideal situation, but I think you can get around this. I think you could find spaces throughout the roster to come up with this. So you have to make tough calls. Like, does Dylan Cook make your roster? Because I think Dylan Cook should make your roster. I like Dylan Cook. I believe Dylan Cook right now is playing better football than Troy Fautanu, but you're not going to get rid of Troy Fautanu. So maybe you sneak Dylan Cook onto the practice squad. At the same time, maybe Nate Herbig doesn't work out and isn't your starting center, and he's a guy that you could trade or get rid of, or so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that's ideal, but that opens up roster spots. And you have guys like Mason McCormick, and you have guys like Spencer Anderson, so you can make that work. When it comes to the wide receiver room, maybe you don't keep 6 guys. Maybe you just keep 5. Maybe you walk in there with George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, let's say, and Roman Wilson. Those are your 5. And you feel real good about that, and you don't need a 6th. I think that you could come up with spaces here. It's not ideal, but if you're the Steelers, keeping Scotty Miller, keeping Des Fitzpatrick, keeping, I don't know, a 4th offensive tackle, not worth ruining this team by not having a starting fullback, not having a powerful blocking tight end who could work in 13 personnel. I like both of those guys on this roster, and I think they fit. I don't believe that they're Elijah Riley's like last year where it's like, yo, you got to keep them because they look good and they're awesome. No, I think that they're fits because they make this offense 10 times better. And if that's the offensive strength, then utilize the offensive strength. You could do a lot with some tight ends, man. And if Arthur Smith's around, if you don't have another baller offensive weapon outside of George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth in the receiving game, run the football. And Michael Pruitt and Jack Coletto, they help you run the football. So I'm all about those guys. Those guys, I think, are in a tight competition. I'm excited to start that competition here today. I'll keep you guys updated as we move forward. With that said, we got a lot of questions. I'm excited to answer some questions, as we do every single day. If you guys have more of them, toss them in the chat. What do we got?
Let's start with Austin Gold, who says, how are the rookie O-line guys looking today, i.e. guys like McCormick, Frazier, and Troy Fautanu?
I believe that McCormick had a good day. McCormick's taking steps forward. Zach Frazier is taking steps forward. Troy Fautanu is still struggling out there. He's not having the best of times. He looked good in one-on-ones yesterday, which is promising. And again, I keep trying to say, like, I'm not worried about Troy. There's no part of me that's trying to downplay how good he is, because Troy is going to be a very good offensive tackle in the NFL. Right now, he's just not ready. Like, whether it's the game being too fast for him, the scheme's not matching up, him learning too much, I couldn't tell you what it is. But right now, he doesn't look good. He gets beat more than he makes plays, and that's the only struggle. Zach Frazier has looked good, and he's had his bad days. Today, he looked good. Mason McCormick's been surprisingly good. So those guys, they're getting there. They're definitely coming along for sure.
Let's go to Austin's second question here, who says, if Justin keeps showing up like he has been into week 1 and looks like the better option, what is the likelihood that he breaks into the year as the starting quarterback?
Oh, that's so tough. That's tough. So here's the thing. Russ is not going to look bad whenever he does play. So if Russ comes back tomorrow, which is unlikely, but say Russ comes back next week, the start of next week, he's a full participant. Russ is going to look fine. He's going to look good. There's not going to be issues. Russ has incredible accuracy and a great arm, and he's confident in himself, and the game is slow. So to him, there's not going to be any issues in practice. Like, Ben Roethlisberger never looked bad. Kenny Pickett even looked good in practice from time to time. Like, being a good practice quarterback is the easiest thing to do. So with that said, it's hard for Russ to lose the job. I will say that Justin looked good the last couple of days, and if he continues to look good, there's a conversation to be had, but I believe this is more so just Justin putting himself in a good position to make a case for himself this year and to land a deal next year, more so than to earn the starting job and for Russ to lose it.
X Concepts wants to know, is Fields' ball security a big concern for you? He apparently had 2 forced fumbles today.
No, it's not. So the one fumble, I agree, was definitely a fumble, a punch out. But in training camp, okay, so it's tough in training camp. There's always fumbles. There's always this kind of stuff. But it's always like just after the whistle. So you have to watch. You have to be like, oh, okay, well, did he stop or was that a move? And I don't know. Sometimes it goes to it's just kind of, your interpretation of it. And I would say most times I lean towards a fumble, but I don't have any concerns. I mean, Najee's fumbled a couple of times during training camp. Pat Freiermuth's fumbled. I don't have major concerns, especially like if you're going to judge, and I get where you're coming from this. This is a good question. But Fields has rushed so many times where 2 fumbles is not that big of a deal.
Let's go to Ryan's question, who says, compared to OTAs and minicamp, would you say this team has passed expectations or still has some time that they need to build? PS have been watching all Steelers and Tip of the Iceberg for a while now.
Yeah, shout out. Appreciate you. I would say that right now, my expectations are pretty much the same. For certain guys, they're more. Like for Beanie Bishop, it's much higher. For Jack Coletto, they're much higher. For Michael Pruitt, they're much higher. For Pat Freiermuth, they're much higher. So there's select guys where I'm much higher on them before. The quarterback situation has impressed me the past couple of days. Would like to see that continue. But I would say they're pretty much where they were leaving there, which is I believe the Steelers are a team that at their best could go on a run.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, am I the only one concerned that Russ hasn't done any sprints yet, but happy to see him out there getting reps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about it. I haven't heard anything internally that there is any reason to be concerned, that the Steelers just look at this as there's no reason for Russ to be out there. Him not sprinting, I think, fits into that same situation where, like, if it is a calf injury, you're not going to have the guy sprint. That's troublesome, I would say. Him taking reps, he looks fine throwing the football. I think it's just slow. Like, I don't know. If by the end of next week, Russ still hasn't practiced, we have a conversation about when is it going to come, because at this point, we're getting close to the middle of the preseason where he should be getting reps. But I'm not super worried about it.
Let's go to Anthony's question next. He says, is training camp still on grass or did they transition to turf up at St. Vincent?
It's turf and it stinks, man. It's hot. It's real hot and guys are getting brush burned all up in it and it's hot. So it's turf. It's not fun.
Dalton says, if you were the general manager, what would be 3 transactions you would make before this season starts? Can be minor or major, and extensions do count.
This is a great question. Thank you, Dalton. This is phenomenal, actually. My favorite question in a while. And you guys ask phenomenal questions, but this one's a good one. 3 transactions I would make. All right, so the first one is I'm extending Pat Freiermuth. We'll see what happens or when that happens, and, but Pat Freiermuth getting extended would be my first call to action as a general manager. You're going to save a boatload of money, and Pat Freiermuth's got a ton of development in front of him. If you sign him next year, you're probably spending about another $4 million a year. So I'm extending Pat Freiermuth first. Number 2, I'm trading for a wide receiver. I don't care. I'm trading for one. It's going to happen. I'm not looking at George Pickens as the guy that's going to get a massive contract with the Steelers in 2 years. I'm looking at somebody like Brandon Ayuk as a guy who could get a massive contract and stay here for the next 4 years. Number 3, man, I don't know. Number 3 is tough. Number 3 is a tough one. I would say number 3 right now is I would sit back and I would wait, because I would want to see where the corners go. I'd want to see how the inside linebackers look, because maybe Cole Holcomb's not going to be available this season, and you have to go at a guy like Quan Alexander. But I would sit back and wait, and I would wait for that third one. But those first 2 would be easy, the first 2 that I make, and I would feel very confident in both of them.
Let's go back to Anthony's question here, since it's kind of a build off of his last one. He says, since it's turf, would you consider that the main reason for this string of injuries in camp? No. They're all like, everything is tackle injuries. So Roman went down after he got tackled. He just kind of got wrapped up wrong. Somebody fell on him.
and he went down weird. And I don't know what happened with Kyron, but I would imagine it's probably the same thing. There hasn't been like a non-contact injury. And St. Vincent turf is actually pretty good turf from what I hear. So I would say no. That being said, practicing on turf is not the best, but if you've ever been at St. Vincent when it rains, that's like 4 or 5 days of practice that you would lose after that because it's not normal rain. So turf is the best thing they could have.
Robert wants to know, will Tomlin start rookies earlier this season compared to the last few years where the rookies had to sit for 3 to 6 weeks?
I don't know. That's a tough question. So Roman Wilson, yes, Roman Wilson will be a slowly developed guy. He will take a while before he's a major piece to this offense. I believe Zach Frazier will get the starting job by week 1. And I think Troy Fautano will get the starting job when he deserves it. But right now, he probably hasn't earned that starting job. Peyton Wilson will be involved heavily right off the jump, but he's not a starter, and he won't be a starter by the end of the season because Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts are your starters. And they're not like last year where it's Patrick Queen and Levi Wallace, and you're like, are Patrick Peterson and Levi Wallace, and you're like, these guys shouldn't be starting. Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts should be starting, so that's what you're looking for. But I would say it's quicker this year because Beanie Bishop's going to play a role too, and that's an undrafted guy. But they're going to have to earn their place. Nobody's going to be given anything.
Let's go over to Scott's question, who says, why are the Steelers running a jet sweep and getting a potential starting receiver hurt? Why is the quarterback pushing a sled and also getting hurt? Do you have an issue with the way Wilson & Wilson's injury law firm started up this week?
Yeah. I do have an issue with Russ. Pushing the sled for Russ is ridiculous. No quarterback should be pushing a sled. If we're going to be honest, the quarterbacks shouldn't be taking conditioning tests. That's ridiculous. They don't have to be in shape. They're a quarterback. They don't do anything. Ben Roethlisberger never lifted a weight in his life. I doubt he ever ran a sprint in his NFL career. You don't need to be in shape as a quarterback. Don't do a conditioning test. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me if Russ was like, I'll show you how it's done, guys. I'm going to be the leader of the team. I want to be the first one pushing the sled. And it was kind of a Russ thing. The jet sweep, no, I like jet sweeps. I think they work in the NFL. I get it. Pittsburgh Steelers fans have a very bad taste of jet sweeps. And I mean, that's totally justified. But if Arthur Smith's a good offensive coordinator, which all signs point to that he is, he could utilize jet sweeps in a proper manner and they could be effective. So I'm not anti-jet sweep. I think that was a good one. Pushing the sled, wild, man. Wild that a quarterback is doing any of that. There is no need.
Vibing with the Dog says, I've heard Matthew Wright has been better than Boswell. Kicker competition incoming or not?
I will say that Chris Boswell missed, I believe, 4 or 5 field goal attempts, including an extra point during his first practice out here kicking footballs. That's concerning, but I don't know. I'm not. Boz is Boz, and I don't believe the Steelers. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Steelers don't even know. Like if he missed all those field goals and everybody's like, Mike Tomlin's like, did he miss him? I don't even remember. I couldn't care. I wouldn't say a kicker competition is incoming. They don't do enough during training camp for there to be a kicker competition. Like this year we're a weekend of punts and our practice, and you've punted the football one time. Last year it would have been every single day because that's what you have to do with special teams. You have to make the competition. They're not making a competition, so I would say no. But Boswell did not look good on his first day. That is true.
Let's go to Steven's question, who says, as it sits today, who's the day one starter in your opinion, and who seems to be the guys taking on leadership roles?
So I'm guessing this is about the quarterback. I'm going to go Russell Wilson is my day one starter. There's, in my head, still no quarterback competition. I'm not saying that can't change because Justin has looked good the last 3 days, and that's something to keep an eye on, certainly. But right now, in my head, I still don't believe there's a quarterback competition. And who's the guy that's taking on leadership? Both of them are. Both of the quarterbacks are. They look really good in the leadership roles, but also like Najee looks better. You got some good guys on the offensive line. Broderick stepping up. Pat Freiermuth stepping up on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is everybody's a leader. Every single person on the defense is a leader. Like Keanu Benton dropped a great quote the other day that was like, somebody's like, hey, Mike Tomlin has big expectations for you this season. He said, yeah, that makes 2 of us. All leaders on the defense. The Steelers are full of leaders right now, to be honest.
Let's go over to KDTV, who says, how do you think Hard Knocks this season will affect Russell Wilson's play, knowing that he loves the media?
Okay, so let's clarify some things here. Russ probably does love the media, and he probably understands how to utilize it to his advantage. That being said, I think that he gets a bad rep because he is very media friendly. Like, he knows how to operate in the media and he knows how to go about everything. And I think people look at that and say, it kind of gives him a bad taste. That being said, I don't think that it's going to affect him necessarily. From what I understand, hard knock cameras kind of stay out of the way. Nobody makes a big deal, and it'll be kind of blended into everything else that's going on. So I'm going to say it's not going to affect anything. And if it does, I could guarantee you that Art Rooney and Mike Tomlin are going to sit him down and be like, "Look, at pal, that ain't happening here. So we don't got to worry about that."
Austin Gold wants to know, what do you guys know about Tariq Black, the new wide receiver that was signed earlier today?
Yeah, former New York Jet, played at Michigan, had a good catch or two today. Don't know much. He's bounced back and forth from the Steelers a couple of times. I don't know if he's a candidate to make this roster, more so a filler later in the depth chart because they released Marquez Callaway, and obviously Roman's going to miss a couple of days. I don't think there's much to talk about just yet. If he starts to impress, cool. We'll definitely dive into him. But for right now, just a Michigan standout, spent some time with the Jets, has a very small chance to make the roster, but had a good first day for sure.
Let's go over to T-Man's question, who says, haven't heard or seen much about cornerback Corey Trice. How's he been looking out there?
He hasn't been doing much of anything. Like, to be honest, it's surprising how little he's actually doing on the field. They did one-on-ones today. He didn't take a single rep. He's only playing third team and very minimal snaps on third team. There's just not much to report because he is not out there. I don't know if it's because he's not fully healthy or if they're just waiting. I couldn't tell you, but right now he's spending more time on the sidelines than almost anybody else.
Let's move over to Malcolm's question, who says, do you think Beanie Bishop has the physicality to play the run and make tackles on bigger guys if he's in the slot?
100%. Go watch Beanie Bishop's West Virginia tape, and he's got some hits on him. Now, is that his specialty? No, but he's had a couple of good runs and a couple of good rushes off the edge, and I think he could fill that role well. You also have a guy named Deshaun Elliott who could come up there and play that role on rundowns, and he's going to be just fine. So I think that Beanie's going to be good. He does have the physicality. I do want to see him matched up against some guys like Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington and see how he holds his own. But to go against George Pickens, who's a pretty physical wide receiver, and beat him twice and both times in physical reps, I think that shows that he's capable of kind of standing his ground.
Let's go to King's question here, who says, do you think Justin still learns as much if Russell Wilson is in his ear helping, kind of like the role Mason had last year?
Yeah, 100%. I believe Justin having an actual mentor and a strong offensive coordinator and a good quarterbacks coach is massive for this kid. You saw how slow the game was, or how fast the game was to him when he showed up here. It was moving way too fast. He looked rocked and rattled all the time. It is slowly starting to slow down for him, and you could see that improvement. I don't know if it's because he's more comfortable in the playbook or with the offense or so on and so forth, but I have a feeling that Tom Arthur Smith, and Russell Wilson are playing a role into this and helping him out. So I think that it's really, really big to have a guy like Russ around Justin Fields. It's going to help a ton.
Let's go to Marlon's question next, who says, on the Russ versus Fields debate, wouldn't it be better to go with the younger guy? He leads us further into the future than Russ, realistically.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if you're gonna look at this and say we're planning the next 5 years of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Justin Fields makes more sense than Russell Wilson. But if you're looking at it and saying you're trying to win a Super Bowl in 2024, which is what the Steelers are trying to do, Russ makes more sense than Justin Fields right now. Now that could change, and I'm open to that change. But right now, Russell Wilson is a guy who's been in this league. The league is slow. The game is slow. He understands it all. He knows how to be a leader. He's consistent. He makes plays. You're not going to get massive, huge, game-changing mistakes from Russell Wilson time to time. People are going to use that and say, oh, what about the Super Bowl? I get it. But for the most part, Russ is going to be a reliable guy. Justin's a dude who's sporadic. Sometimes he looks great. Sometimes he looks bad. He's looked good the past couple of days, but for right now, it's a wait and see situation. So I would say that if you're planning out the future, yes, Justin makes sense. If you're looking at it right now, Russell makes more sense.
Let's go over to Big Mabe, who says, can Pat Fryermuth be a trade piece for a wide receiver 1B? I don't know what the college tight end market looks like, but receiving tight ends aren't particularly rare anymore.
Yeah, no, don't trade Pat Fryermuth. I don't know why people would want to trade Pat Fryermuth. Pat Fryermuth looks great. And I get it that receiving tight ends aren't rare anymore, but there are also a lot of teams in the NFL who don't have a tight end. So to have one, I mean, huge. And I think Pat Fryermuth's got so much growth in front of him. This is the first time that I believe Pat Fryermuth takes a step towards superstardom for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm very excited to see it.
Let's go back to Malcolm, who says, Russ has enough experience to get maybe 4 to 5 wins out of our last 8 weeks. Your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I think yes. I would say yes. I believe the Steelers have the capability to win 8 out of the 8 weeks in the back half of the season. This is a good team. You know, it's a good all-around team. It's not just the quarterback, and I agree with what you're coming from here. I definitely agree with that. But I believe the Steelers are built to win, and that's why it's important not to like rush things like Justin Fields into our plans if he's not ready, because, well, there's just no need for it. So I agree with you. I think that the team as a whole has a shot to win games in the back half of the season.
Let's go over to Hayden's question, who says, hey, Noah, I heard Cam Hayward didn't practice today. If that's true, are you concerned at all about it?
No, because TJ, Minka, Isaac Siamalu, and that might be it. Didn't practice today either. Just a veteran day off. That happens once a week.
Let's go over to Steven's question, who says, there wasn't much offensive leadership last year. Which players seem to be taking that role this year? I know you touched on it earlier, but for those who weren't here, touch on it again.
Yeah, so it's Russ and Justin, easy taking on leadership roles. Van Jefferson's taking on a leadership role, which is huge. Pat Fryermuth is as well, and Najee Harris. Those would be my guys. But you also have James Daniels, who feels like a vet, Broderick Jones, those types of guys. But the quarterbacks are leading the way by far.
Steelerman 47 wants to know what's going on with our punter, Cameron Johnston.
He looks like a stud, my friend. He looks like a stud. Cameron Johnston looks great. This is going to be a guy that you don't have to worry about. It is a big move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cameron Johnston looks real good out there and has all throughout OTAs and now minicamp and training camp.
Suki Knows Best says, how do you feel about the wide receiver core right now?
Yeah, don't feel good about it. I don't think anybody should feel good about it. They've had their moments. Van Jefferson looks better than I anticipated him looking. Roman Wilson started to come on, but then you get hurt, and now you're back to ground zero. Calvin Austin looks good, but you want to get him more involved than he's been, and Pat Fryermuth is probably your wide receiver 2 right now. It's not the best. I would say that I'm still concerned about it. If a move opens itself up, you go and make that move. Don't get satisfied if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot of room for improvement. That being said, I think the Steelers are aware of that.
Let's go over to Terry's question. He says, I think the Steelers need to give the Pats a call on Juju Smith-Schuster, especially if it's for a 6th round pick. What do you think?
I think if Juju gets released, you go and you call Juju and he comes back to Pittsburgh without any question. But I wouldn't give up a 6th round pick for a guy that's probably not going to make the roster. I mean, he's too expensive to make the roster. He's not a part of that offense anymore. He's going to get cut. Call him, bring him back to Pittsburgh. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, people want to talk about Michael Thomas. No, screw that. Go get Juju. Juju's a better option than Michael Thomas. He's less frail. He knows your team. He knows your city, and he could do everything that you're looking for. You're looking for somebody to block? Juju's your guy. You're looking for somebody to catch tight passes? Juju's your guy. Like, I think Juju fits well into this offense.
Let's go back to Steven, as he has another question here saying, if you were to grade 1 to 100 our secondary last year compared to this year, what would that be? And the same question goes for the O-line.
Let's start with the offensive line. I think the offensive line takes a last year, if it was a 60, 65, I think this year it's like an 80, looking good. And I think Zach Frazier bumps that when he's well to like an 85-ish. Secondary last year was probably a sound by the end of the season, like a 25 at best. I mean, they were bad. This year, if everybody's healthy throughout the entire season, 85. Cam Sutton comes back, maybe a 90, depending on if Darius Rush holds up as your backup on the outside. but I think they got all the pieces, man. They look good. The safety group, the corner group, you need Darius Rush to be a guy, but Beanie Bishop looks good, and Cam Sutton's going to come back eventually. So I would say 85.
Alex wants to know, do you think starting Wilson keeps the Steelers at the same mediocrity they've been stuck in, which is winning seasons, which are nice, but everybody wants better? Or is the team better off with Fields having a higher ceiling?
No, it's better off with the guy who's going to win you a Super Bowl right now, who isn't going to make the mistakes. That's Russell Wilson. That being said, Justin Fields could eliminate those mistakes, and there could be a real quarterback competition. But right now, I'm saying it's Russ. Russ is the guy that you're going to start and you're going to feel most comfortable with. That's going to give you your best opportunity to make some moves or make a run in the postseason. I'm sticking with Russ. I'm not avoiding the Russ situation.
Let's go to Malcolm, who wants to know, who are your teams in the playoff picture and how likely are the Steelers to beat a team like the Texans or Bills if they finish with a 6th or 7th seed?
I mean, that we are so far away from being able to answer that question, but I would say that it's more likely than it was last year. Houston, I believe, could be the best team in the NFL this year, so that's really tough. Buffalo, I don't think is going to be better than they were last year, so that's a possibility. I don't know who's in the playoffs right now. If I had to guess, the Steelers are one of them, but I also think Cincinnati has a shot to be one of them, and I think Baltimore has a shot to be one of them. Houston, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, maybe. There are so many names out there that I think are going to be good. So we'll get closer and answer that question. But for right now, I'd feel good about their shots against pretty much anybody, to be honest.
Let's go to Vibin with the Dogs, who says, do you think Fields getting these reps gives the front office a chance to see if he's worth an extension after this season?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing here is people want to talk about a quarterback competition now, and should it be Fields or should it be Russ? This is the best opportunity the Steelers have to say, does Justin have enough potential that we extend him for 2 years after the season? And right now the answer is yes. So that's what I'm looking at is this is an opportunity for Justin to say, I deserve to be here. And for the Steelers to say, yes, let's make that happen. That's what you're getting out of right now.
Let's move over to Kevin's question, who says, who would you sign as a wide receiver that's on the market right now? Any free agents that catch your eye?
Nope, I wouldn't sign any of them, to be totally honest with you. Michael Thomas is too frail to sign during training camp. I'm not making that move. Hunter Renfrow isn't a guy anymore, even though I think he's got more upside than he's had in the last 2 years. I'm waiting. I think that guys like Treylon Burks, guys like Juju Smith-Schuster could find themselves on the open market, and then you make a move then if that's the route that the Steelers are going to go. But I'm waiting. I'm not signing anybody on the open market right now.
We're going to go through a few more here. Let's start with Samuels. It says, is Darnell Washington's receiving/route tree an improvement is that improvement a factor to support the wide receiver core this year?
No, I don't think so. It's nice to have a backup tight end that you could utilize in the passing game, but that'd be like saying, is Connor Hayward a factor in the receiving game of why you wouldn't go get a Brandon Ayuk? Like, no, it definitely boosts it. It benefits it. It adds to your offense, but not a reason that you feel confident in these guys for sure.
I think that might allude to the answer to the next question, which is, what's the Steelers' weakest position right now, in your opinion?
Wide receiver. Without a question, if this is where the wide receiver like concern level is, like this is the next bar of the next position. It is significant. Wide receiver, it is the worst wide receiver core in the NFL, and you have to do something about it. I don't see how you walk into the season with this group and feel confident. I just don't get it.
Let's go to Malcolm's question, who says, is a Najee Harris extension on the table for you, and or how much would we need from him this season for him to get extended into the future?
I don't think Najee and an extension is even a consideration. And that's because if Najee plays well enough this season that he's worthy of an extension, he's going to price himself out of Pittsburgh and he's going to go get somebody to pay him a boatload of money. And there are going to be teams, the Giants, the Raiders, there are going to be teams who are looking for a big running back deal. That's going to be Najee. If he's not good enough for an extension, the Steelers are going to move on and they're going to feel very confident about Jaylen Warren being the guy who signs a 1-year tender deal for like $2 million. So I don't think Najee gets a deal no matter what. I think that's already in the minds of both parties here. But it would be nice to see him stick around. I think he's an important piece of this offense, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Let's finish it off with KG's question. He says, I'm going to the Jets game this year in October. What are some places to hit up while I'm in Pittsburgh?
That's a really good one. You got to go to Permane Brothers, obviously. Go to the Strip District. I tell everybody, go to the Strip District. It's worth it. Oh, you're going to a Jets game in October, so I would go downtown. I'd visit Market Square. I'd have a good time there. But the Strip District is where I'm at. That's my go-to, and Permane Brothers, that's my food of choice. If I'm a tourist, obviously, but that would be my go-to. And go to the one in the Strip District. It's the original one. If you don't want to wait in line, go to Market Square. It's the second best one.
I'll throw something else in there. If you're looking for pizza, Milano's on 5th up by the hockey.
No way, dude. No way.
Or Giovanni's downtown.
Giovanni's. Thank you. I was going to say, if you're in Pittsburgh for one night and you're not telling somebody to go to Giovanni's, dude. Listen, right on 6th.
Pittsburgh's a good pizza town. So you have multiple
they're
options.
not. No, they're not. I'll argue that one too. No, they're not.
You'll argue Pittsburgh's not a good pizza town?
It's the worst pizza town I've ever been in. Ever.
You need to come visit me down in Northern Virginia then.
And maybe I do. Maybe I do.
Bad.
But I will say, look, if you Google the pizza capital of the world, it will tell you Old Forge, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is the neighboring town to Old Forge, Pennsylvania. I grew up in good pizza. Not good pizza out here. Not good pizza. So,
hey, agree to disagree.
All right. I like it.
That's a wrap for today's questions then.
That's all we got. That's all we got. Cool. With that said, guys, we are going to head out of here. Thank you so much for dealing with the bad stream jumping into the good stream. We appreciate all your guys' patience as we work through some stuff. With that said, we're going to head out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow, most likely live once again from St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.